This is Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Hello and welcome. This is Monday Motorsport on Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester. Thank you very much for pressing play and listening to us. Yes, we are live on a Monday night, almost every Monday, usually. I'll tell you more later. But coming up on tonight's programme, we will have loads of brilliant things to talk about because we will be telling you what happened at Donington Park, where myself and Dan Marr were at the weekend to go and experience the fantastic brand new Formula Ford series. Yes, Formula Ford. James Beckett with James Beckett Motorsport has this year launched a new Jack Cavill Heritage Formula Ford series, and it's had its first weekend at Donington. We'll tell you about it, and we'll tell you about how it got off to an explosive start. That's something you won't want to miss a bit later on in the show. Plus, the LMP3 and GT Cup were in action at the weekend as well. We'll tell you what happened and tell you about how those championships are still very much in the running for being some of the best championships in the UK at the moment. We'll be hearing from James Beckett later in the show also. Plus, a look ahead to this week's big round at Rockingham. British Formula 3 Championship back in action, and the British GT Championship as well. Plus, it's a bit of Formula 1 talk as well, looking ahead to the weekend. And touring cars, BTCC, back in action. Loads of stuff to talk about and tell you. And here to do it with us, please welcome onto the show, Dan Marr. Hello, Dan. Good morning, evening. Hello, good night.
Hello, Lester. Good evening, and hello, everybody at home. I hope you're going to enjoy the next few hours of action here on Motorsport Radio. We had a fantastic weekend at Donington this weekend. I'm a little bit lobster-like at the moment, along with the hay fever. So
it was a little bit hot.
It was just a little hot. There was a nice shower in the middle of it, though.
Indeed, yes. So apologies if we start just like blithering on. That will be the effects of heat stroke, and yeah, that's. Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic weekend. We will get onto that at Donington a bit later on. We are welcoming your comments all evening because we are currently live at the moment. If you don't believe us, you can comment and get your name read out. That's how we can prove it. You see.
And your comment.
And your comment. Unless you're watching this and we're not live, in which case just leave a comment anyway. And we'll still enjoy reading it. Hello to Sarah Nunning. Hello, Sarah. Tuned in already. Hi. Hello to everybody. So if you're brand new, by the way, just want to mention before we get on to our first point of order, if you're brand new to Motorsport Radio, hello and welcome. We do have listeners all over the globe. We have a lot of motorbike racing fans who we know also like other types of motorsport occasionally as well. So you're more than welcome to join us on a Monday evening for some Monday Motorsport. And we talk not just about bikes, but about everything else, basically. On Thursday night, usually in the week, is when we talk exclusively bike action with Kiko Giles. He'll be here usually on a Thursday. And we'll get on to talking about bikes later in the show because we've got some live bike action in the form of the future stars of MotoGP and BSB. I'll tell you more in a bit. So, Dan, what else was on this weekend in the form of tin top action, specifically at Monza?
So specifically Monza, we're not really tin top action, but sports cars and endurance racing fans.
Yes.
We had the first round of the 2018 Blancpain GT series in. The Blancpain GT Endurance, the name gets longer every year, but the first round of the Blancpain Endurance Series, as it used to be called before it became the Blancpain G. Is it so? The big 3 hour races were on. The first of those was this weekend.
Oh, the endurance ones.
The endurance ones. Right. There was 53 cars, I think 53 or 52 cars, GT3 cars, which took to the start at Monza on Sunday. We also had supporting that Formula Renault 2.0 as well as the Lamborghini Super Trofeo. And there's just a few names that regular motorsport radio fans will have in mind, such as James Poole, who had
Hi, James.
Hello, James. big fan of the show, we're told. He's a big nerd, I think he quoted us. We'll have to dig out some of his quotes from last year. But he had a fantastic start to his 2018 European campaign. He started early on in the year in the Asian Lamborghini Super Trofeo Series with 2 wins and did really well over there. He came to Europe and nearly won the first race. In fact, he was on course to win the first race of the Super Trofeo Europe at Monza, but I think a switch had failed in his car, which cruelly robbed him of a win. Just 9 thousandths of a second over the line was the deficit between himself and the winner of that race, unfortunately pulling just very slowly over the line at the end, which is a shame. But 2 second places for him was very good. The second round of the 2018 Formula Renault is it Euro Cup?
Euro Cup, I believe, yes.
Formula Renault Euro Cup, the 2.0 one. A good second round for them. Very close, entertaining action as ever. A few little niggles, but also something which is quite entertaining. The Blancpain GT Series. There's a second series which is for slightly older GT3 cars, for gentlemen drivers. I think it's really aimed at, and that was some great racing. But the big one, the Blancpain GT's Endurance Series, was racing this weekend, and boy, what a fantastic 3 hours we had in prospect. Beautiful sunshine, a bit of controversy, some fantastic racing, and a few shock surprises taking us to the 3-hour mark. And really, it didn't feel like 5 minutes to me.
Well, yeah, if you were one of the lucky ones who actually saw the race, then yeah, lucky you. There was action and drama aplenty. Slightly reluctant to talk about what happened to James Paul, so I won't, unless you want to mention it.
As mentioned about 2 moments ago, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Hi, James, if you're listening. Anyway, yeah, the actual race results, I'm flicking around the Blancpain website, slightly confusing. They do it like a result after 1 hour, 2 hour, and then they do a main race result. Yes. I don't know if that's the overall race result.
It's common. That sort of timing scoring is very common throughout endurance racing because people like to know where they are on the hour. So there's several different classes in the Blancpain GT Endurance Series. So you've got the overall, which is the Pro, which is for all of the pro drivers, all the manufacturers. They shouldn't be full manufacturers, but they get the full support anyway. And that's been limited this year to, I believe, 26 entries throughout the entirety, because Blancpain is defined as a Pro-Am championship. Just all the influx of factory drivers and really high-up teams has sort of pushed the boat out quite far recently. So that's been limited to 26. We only had 24 this weekend. But great stuff from Aston Martin, from Bentley, from Porsche, Ferrari. All of the GT3 manufacturers you can dream of were here. The only ones we missed were Corvette, but obviously we don't see them. And the start of Lexus in the Blancpain GT Series Endurance.
Lexus?
Yes, Lexus with the RCF GT3s, which have been in development for years and years now, which is being run by Emile Frey, who fans of endurance racing might remember them more over the last few years for the Jaguar XKR GT3 development, which has been going really strong. And they had a fantastic 4th place finish in the weekend's race, and they were running second and nearly at several points went for the lead. So the Jaguars really hitting the mark so far this year. Overall, the WRT Audi, who else would you really expect? Well, it was very close. They took the victory with Dries Van Toor having a fantastic stint. So did the 2nd place car, which was the Maxi Goertz, Alvaro Parent and Maxi Buch Mercedes. So Maxi Buch and Maxi Goertz, both fantastic stints in the 2nd and 3rd portions of the race in the Mercedes, dragging themselves up from a little bit further behind. Took 4th, took 3rd, took 2nd, nearly took the win, only 2 seconds away by the end of the race. Bentley debuted the new style Continental GT3, and both types of GT3 were racing in the race this weekend. This was the first time we've seen the new shape Continental GT3 out racing in a GT3 race. They're using this season as a bit of a development season to get used to the car, get the BOP set up correctly, just get used to it before they start giving it out to customers in around the July mark. There was a bit touch and go whether the Team Parker Racing boys were going to be running with the new cars at some point in British GT this year. They're not going to be, but Team Parker Racing well represented on the grid this year. And a bit of a shout out to another regular from Motorsport Radio last year was Seb Morris, who with Derek Pearce and Rob Bell took a great second place in the Pro-Am entry. So there was actually 4 different classes this year in GT, in Blancpain GT Endurance. So you have the Pros, which you mentioned, you have the Pro-Am, you have the Am, which is just 3 sort of bronze drivers. Nothing, they're amateur drivers who are just going out there maybe for a bit of fun, but very competitive racing. Pro-Am and mix, like I say, Seb Morris in with Derek Pearce and Rob Bell. So a few clubman drivers in there with some really good pros and really can contend for good victories. Pro, and for this year also the Silver Cup, which is for 3 silver drivers, which the Jaguar was racing in and took a fantastic victory in that class. And it was a great debut for Lexus. They had a few struggles, but in endurance racing, a few niggles. So did the Nissans, who had a few issues with various bits, because that's basically a brand new car, the new Nissan GTR Nismo GT3. Even though it looks almost identical to the older style GTR, it's very different inside. They push the engine as far back as they can. They've gotten rid of a load of the weight. It's a bit lower down. It's a bit more aero focused, so it's really dramatically changed. BMW had a challenging start to the year with an engine failure on one car and alternator issues, I believe, on the other. Ooh. So up and down, 3-hour races proving a bit of a difficulty. Don't forget, later on in the year, we got a 6-hour race, I believe, at Paul Ricard, and then the total 24 hours of Spa, which will be the really big challenge. Another fantastic one, and I think we've still got Silverstone, we've still got a few other races in this GT series in a few weeks, as well as when the Sprint series, which is a little bit thinner entry for this year, but still high-quality racing, will be coming to Brantown. You laugh, but it was still... Well, I was watching the races at Zolder a couple of weeks ago when GT4 European Series was supporting them, and even though there was about 20-odd cars on the grid, it was fantastic racing. A few years ago, we had 40-odd cars on a Sprint Cup grid, and it was basically chaos. And yet 20-odd cars, fantastic racing, really close battles, and it will be good to see that. Silverstone, maybe suit the Bentleys. It was close for everyone in the Blancpain Series, not going to change throughout the course of the year. WRT Audi and Dries van Thor really emulating his older brother Lawrence, who's now a Porsche driver, been driving with Porsche for a few years. But Audi, so far, so good. They never seem to work on British circuits that much, but certainly at Monza, they've done well where traditionally I think the Ferraris, with their natural power, would have really won. And Mikhail Aloshin, or is it Mikhail Aloshin? How do you say it? Aloshin, the former IndyCar driver, former GP2 as it was then driver, having some great success in Blancpain, leading for a very long time in his second stint. The SMP Ferrari doing well in the middle portion and the start of the race when they were in the lead.
Absolutely, yeah. It was good to hear. I did see on social medias that Seb Morris did pick up a podium with Seb being quite prolific on the old Instagram. So congratulations, Seb. And to just touch on the thing that you mentioned earlier regarding Formula Renault Euro Cup, the 2-litre Euro Cup series. Our championship was in action also at Monza, and lots of action and drama in that because it was a win for a Chinese driver. I'm not going to.
I think his surname is Yi.
Yi. We'll call him Yi. Yi. He said on the podium. And Christian Lundgaard, who the young Dane, won the second race for MP Motorsport, and there was a spectacular incident on the start-finish straight in race 2, I believe. Not that's why you should watch it, but you should watch it.
Formula Renault Euro Cup is normally fantastic racing, and a few of the Brits who had really good starts to the year, the likes of Max Futrell, who was the points leader coming into Monza. I don't believe he actually scored any points. Thomas Maxwell, sadly a bit anonymous this weekend, but was going quite well at Paul Ricard. And it's going to be a very long and competitive season for them, but we've got some more fantastic tracks for them to race around. Monza is very good for single-seaters, though, isn't it?
Certainly, yeah, and it's fantastic to watch any single-seater car
ever
slipstream around Monza. So that was good. Former F4 driver, British F4 driver Logan Sargent was also in the race. Had a kind of okay weekendish. He might say it was bad because he didn't win. But Max Futrell, dropping the ball there. I'm not going to blame him entirely. It was everyone else's fault, I'd say. But yeah, unfortunate for Max. He's still in the hunt. He's in fourth in the championship. It is Lundgaard who's leading Formula Renault 2.0, if you care about that sort of thing. Right, that's what happened at Monza. Incidentally, the next couple of rounds in the Blancpain GT series, they're next at Brands Hatch in, I don't know the dates exactly, I'm sure you will know.
In about 3 weeks' time for the sprint series.
And then they're straight over to Silverstone for the Endurance Cup. Yeah. So, last year, was that the week after? Directly the week after?
Yeah, they're normally either week. It's because a lot of the teams normally do both. Some of the teams, anyway, do both. Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah, exactly. It's logistically, it suits them. And it'll be good. It'll be good to see. I think the only other thing I wanted to pick up on Blancpain was a privateer entry, which is one, I think, believed just out of Italy, entered the first race in a Lamborghini Gallardo, not a Huracan. The Huracan is the latest all-singing, all-dancing GT3 car, which is doing really well in British GT and Blancpain all over the world. And yet a Gallardo storms in, qualifies fourth, runs fourth and third for a long time in the race, struggled in the last stage of the race when most of the really quick drivers were in. But it shows just how well a BOP can help an older car and an older entry, because you can bring more or less any homologated car you want. You know it'll be more or less there, and if you pedal it really well, it runs competitively. And I think that's what endurance racing GT3 is all about, and we'll be talking about it later, but GT Cup really thrives on that as an example. There's your lead-in.
Exactly, yeah. We'll be getting on to the British GT Championship and previewing their next round, which is this weekend at Rockingham. So if you're in the area, if you're hanging around Corby or Northampton, got nothing else to do, I mean, you know, I don't know, I think I've just slandered Corby. Anyway, head over to Rockingham, basically, because it's going to be some fantastic action. I promise you that.
If a bit wet.
Is it going to be wet? Anyway.
Allegedly.
But yeah, Formula 3 is in action as well, loads of stuff, and we'll talk about it all a bit later. So this is Monday Motorsport. My name is Lester. Dan Marr is here with us to look back and look ahead, both at the same time, to what just happened at the weekend and what's going to be happening next weekend as well. And find out as well, when we talk a bit about the Jack Cavill Heritage Formula Ford Championship, as to why it got off to a bit of a explosive start at the weekend. We'll tell you more about that a bit later. So stay tuned for that. Interesting. Plus, we've got a chat with James Beckett to explain what the Heritage Formula Ford series is and why it could unveil the next IndyCar star. If you don't know anything about what we're talking about, stay tuned. Because you might. So that's all coming up a bit later. We will preview the touring cars as well. BTCC back in action. It's kind of a super Sunday this weekend. And also we'll be talking a bit about mini bikes, of all things. Yes, the future of BSB and MotoGP. Not just the future, the current stars. Will be probably racing this weekend. I think Brad Ray might be racing. I don't know. But we'll talk a bit about that later, previewing the second round of the Cool Fab Racing British Mini Bikes Championships. That's all still to come right here on Monday Motorsport on Motorsport Radio.
Welcome to the season opener of the BRCC Mazda Super Cup Championship.
Yeah, it might have looked easy, but it wasn't. It was quite scary as well, because they're coming full speed and you're trying to slow it down.
Yeah, no, there's good clean racing, so that's what we do it for, isn't it?
Check out highlights of the Mazda MX-5 Super Cup, Thursday the 26th of April at 4 p.m. on Motorsport TV.
This is Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
And we're here live on a Monday. It's Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester. Hello. Good evening. Dan Marr is here with us, and loads of action coming up on telly for you this weekend, and not just at the weekend, but during the week as well. Mazda MX-5 Super Cup. We'll tell you more about a couple of other series that we've got our eye on as well. But for now, I suppose let's talk, Dan, about let's head to Donington and see about the first round of the LMP3 Cup and GT Cup as well. Yes, you may have heard about these things before if you've never seen them in action. Fantastic next level of British GT action. Not associated in any way with the British GT Championship, but it's still a fantastic and very spectacular with the LMP3 Cup. Quite a decent package, I would say, in Oldham. Yeah,
it's a very good family-friendly package because you've got pretty much almost everything for the family. You've got F3 Cup for the single-seater aficionados like Leicester, for example. You've got GT3 Cup and P3 Cups for the likes of me. Maybe you're a bit more interested in that side of stuff. And often there was Radicals there this weekend. And we had a few other fantastic championships like the 7 Race Series, which is a whole load of caterhams.
A whole load of caterhams, yeah. Wherever they go, there's usually like pushing 100 entries. Yeah.
There were a lot of them, and then there was also Sports 2000, which is a fantastic club-level championship for open prototypes, a bit lower level than P3, but still very competitive racing. And it was a great start to the season at Donington. As you can see, the GT Cup in their first round of the championship for 2018, and the Aston Martin just coming into the shot in the background.
Yeah, there was.
If that wasn't a Mosler,
there was loads of. Basically, it's like I said, if you've never ever heard of the GT Cup, it is. Think British GT Championship from a few years ago. It's basically that. And it's
an eclectic mix.
An eclectic, fabulous, amazing mix. And all...
I mean, look at that. That's a TVR Cerber. Where do you see those racing these days?
Well, in the GT Cup, of course, Dan.
Exactly. That's very, very smooth.
Thank you.
Yes, it was a great start to the season for those guys. That bright yellow... Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo car had a few issues in qualifying and in practice, managed to get out for the races and did a competitive job. You did just see a Maserati, which you would have seen at a few British GT rounds last year, racing this weekend at Donington, so shows just how attractive the championship is to these kinds of entries. That Sam Random car was the Ebor 23, which is the Maserati Gran Turismo GT4. They took a win in the final race of the weekend, and all 3 races in the weekend in Group GTH, which is for homologated GT4 entries, a new class for this year. That car, though, the Aston Martin, the number 12, with Nigel Hudson and Adam Wilcox on it, took a great victory in races 1 and 2, although denied in race 3 with the McLaren, the Gibson Motorsport and Daniel Gibson. McLaren 650S just coming into shot. That took the win in the 50-minute endurance race. The format for 2-day meetings is... it has a great format because you have, on the first day, you have 2 25-minute races, a qualifying session and a few 30-minute sessions for practice. So very close, very interesting. And on the second day, you have qualifying and then a 50-minute endurance race, which is long enough to be quite a long race, but not quite long enough to need refueling. So it has that balance in there where everyone can run flat out. There is a pit stop required, and you can have a pit stop to change driver, or you just come in, stop for a bit, and then go back out. But you see,
and for the for the drivers who are I'm going to try and say this as politely as possible, gentlemen drivers.
Yes, it's very focused on the AM side of racing. And
so a good 50-minute race. I mean, that's a good old chunk of time. That.
Yes, it's a good distance and a good time to actually get established into a race. Good battles, good rhythms. It has a pit stop in there. But the important thing for this kind of racing is that it is very friendly towards the AM drivers and very focused toward the AM drivers. Where sometimes say about the British GTs, well, it's got a load of pro drivers in. You need a pro driver. You don't necessarily need it there. But this is a different level perhaps, because it allows someone to come in, do this for a bit of fun over the weekend, score some serious points, but all of the classes actually score points towards the overall championship. So a bit like the British Saloon Car Championship many, many years ago, where there were different classes. Everyone scores the same amount of points for the overall title, as well as points in your own class. Like the winners last year, Graham Davidson, had a really good battle in Group GTO, dominating in the McLaren, but nearly lost the title to a GTA car, which is the lowest class in this championship, because of the amount of entries and the amount of competitive racing there was in these classes. So it's very different, and it provides an eclectic mix of cars and different things to go out and race. It's a little bit more cross-friendly, shall we say, compared to some other national GT championships, but ultimately it provides track time, a different setting for track time, and maybe a more open and relaxed setting than British GT.
Exactly, yeah. And just to quickly mention some of the stars of the first round of the GT Cup who managed to get onto the podium. Well, the Aston Martin GT3 of Hudson Wilcox was, I think they won race number 1, I believe. Then Downing Riley in the Mosler, they were on the podium as well. Gibson and Gibson in the McLaren 650S. In race number 2, don't know why I said it like that. Gibson and Gibson in the McLaren, Hudson Wilcox and Michael Igoe. And he certainly did. He got third in the end. Downing and Riley, Hudson and Wilcox, and Gibson and Gibson as well, rounding out the podium for the weekends, I would say. But overall, if you've never been to a GT Cup round, GT Cup / LMP3, that sort of share the bill, essentially, as they're both under the same company from Butte Motorsport. Definitely check it out. It's definitely worth it. And we will get on to talking a little bit about the LMP3 Cup as well, because that provided some pretty spectacular action as well. Because, again, just to talk about the LMP3 Cup, Dan, for those who don't know about it, never seen it, it's like the European Le Mans Series or even the World Endurance Series, just on a slightly smaller scale, really, isn't it?
Sort of. So the LMP3 Cup is what it says on the tin. It provides a national level championship for LMP3 cars. So it provides a platform going from GT3 or GT4, for example, up into this kind of car, which is cost capped to €206,000 per chassis, which is a lot of money for the likes of you and I, maybe, Mr. Forbes, but in motor racing terms, it's actually quite cost effective. But they come with warranties on the engines. They've got to run at least 10,000 kilometres, which is a very long time in terms of engine running, and you get a warranty on that. So very different and very useful. So what a new thing they've actually entered for this year is something called LMP4, which is a lower than LMP3.
So this is a new. I mean, we've heard of LMP and LMP2, and this is LMP3. Yeah. There's now an LMP4.
Yes, so LMP4 is not fully recognised by the ACO, unlike LMP3. And we'll discuss the sort of involvement with the ACO in a second. But LMP4 is something that was started by Ligier, and I think Radical have a RXC turbo, which is also eligible. But it was powered by a smaller Ford EcoBoost V6, but it sounded very nice when out on circuit this weekend, much louder than the P3 cars for some reason.
Yeah, just funny you should mention that. It was just
burbling down the pit lane, but it's designed as a bit even more cost-effective way to get into prototype racing. But P3, we saw Norma out for the first time in LMP3 Cup history.
How is old Norma anyway?
So Norma is one of the 5 manufacturers eligible for LMP3 chassis construction. Ligier by far is the most popular, and has sold over 100 LMP3 cars, which shows how popular the category is. Yeah. And Dominic Poole was in with Jack Butel in the number 96 Speedworks car. Dominic Poole, you might not recognise the name, but you might recognise the company he works for. He's the CEO of Costa Coffee. And there's no actual reference to Costa on the side of his car or anything.
Oh, really?
Yes, but it was brought up quite a lot by the circuit commentators. Great job from Mark Werrell and...
was he after a sneaky free cup of coffee by any chance?
Maybe. I think, and Chris Dawes of Open Doors Training, in front of the show there as well this weekend, doing a great job in the heat. But they mentioned it quite a lot, and I think it's a great way to go racing because it's not a high-level commitment for him. Because in British GT, for example, a load of the AM drivers in GT3 and GT4 have got their own businesses, are very busy, they can't really go out onto the continent. Well, this is another even less time-consuming way to go racing because you can do it in 2 days. You have a 1 hour practice session on the Saturday, 2 10-minute qualifying sessions on Saturday and Sunday, and 2 1-hour races over the course
without
of
even
2
leaving the
days.
country.
Without leaving, well, they do go to Spa, so they do leave the country once, but beyond that, you don't leave the country. So
that's a very good sell, actually, Dan. Maybe you should be their marketing manager or something.
Yeah, I think I tried marketing once. I wasn't very good at it, but it was a great entry. It wasn't maybe the highest amount of numbers. I think it was only 7 P3 cars and one of these new P4 cars. It was fantastic racing though, very close. Whilst Colin Noble, who's the reigning champion, did very well at the start of the weekend. In fact, got pole position with Tony Wells, who is a new driver, a new competitor for him this year. Christian Olsen, who took the win in race number 1, driving all on his own, a new guy into the championship in the M-Tech sport car, which is the Norma. Lannon Racing actually bought, I believe, a couple of Lannons, they have bought Lannon, that's their team. They bought a couple of Normas, but they've not brought them out yet, I'm afraid. Okay. But maybe for some of their single-seater drivers, like in Formula 3, they might see them out, like we did for Callum O'Keefe.
Callan O'Keefe, yes. He had a couple of runs out.
Third time the charm go there. But yes, he had a couple of runs with Douglas Motorsport, who do still own their car. They ran very well last year, but the Norma taking its first win on British shores and did very well. And Bradley Smith, who's been looking for drives for a long time and a very competitive driver, took a victory in that car. So
I should add, it's not MotoGP star Bradley Smith.
Not that Bradley Smith. No, I think he would have been busy in the Circuit of the Americas, wouldn't he? Exactly. But Duncan Williams is alongside him in the Norma, doing very well. They took a win in the second race. And tricky conditions. We've got some fantastic, a few mishaps of Dominic Paul and a few others. We'll show some fantastic pictures, as you may be able to see on the screen right now if you're watching back, or if you go over to motorsport.radio later on in the week to see some galleries of the pictures that I took over the course of the weekend. Blisteringly hot. I got a bit sunburnt and my hay fever decided to flare up, which is quite useful when you sort of need to see through the camera so you can take a picture. Some of them were actually in focus, which is a marked improvement on what I normally do.
I'm sure if you take that many, at least a couple have to come out good.
Yeah, I think I took about 1,000 over the course of the day. No more than that easily. I think 1,500. But the beauties of digital photography, my granddad used to tell a story of whenever he used to go on his trips abroad, he always took 36 or had 6 rolls of film where he could take 36 photographs, and now he takes a few hundred over the course of a day or so. So beauty how these things develop. But it was some fantastic racing for P3 Cup. We hope to see more of them out over the course of the season, but they've changed the regulations somewhat this year to make it as open for everyone else as possible, because last year they ran on the Pirelli tyre, which is a long-held association with Butte Motorsport. Pirelli, they have the controlled tyre over in GT Cup. They ran it in LMP3 Cup, and I think one of the little niggles that people had last year was, well, it's not just a case of coming over to the UK and putting on the standard Pirelli tyre because you've got to change the setup. Everything has to change because the tyre is very different. So Michelin are now the new tyre supplier, such as in ELMS and in the Road to Le Mans. They've changed a few of the little things to try and make it as friendly to other people around the globe as possible. So hopefully we will see a few more people coming out in the next few meetings. A bit like TCR UK does, where they've got the same tyre, the same damper, the same suspension as everyone else around the world, just so it can be as homogenised as possible.
As I choke on my own words. Serves me right, I suppose, by trying to be controversial. Dan, do you think the LMP3 Cup will... I mean, I think last year when it started, when it was launched, everyone was giving it a bit of time to grow, let's say. Afforded it a bit of time, allowed...
Well, we were there.
Didn't criticise the small grid numbers too much because it was brand new. Obviously, you're not going to get a full capacity grid full of cars because it's brand new. To preempt my question then, is this the year that the LMP3 Cup is going to actually just take off, i.e. have larger more than 10, 15 entries each round?
Okay, so I'll address this in several points then, shall I? Because I can see the smile in your face. So we were actually, Motorsport Radio me were at the first round of the LMP3 Cup last year when it first started. If you go over to motorsport.radio and search, we've got race reports of the first rounds of the championship, and it had 10 entries then. The first demo race they did in 2016 had 8 entries, which for a late held race wasn't bad. It was the end of October, everyone had spent all their money. Not that many cars were out there, but it was all right. It was a good start. 10 entries at the start of last year. Yeah, it was quality entry though, and it was a good race. The numbers started thinning out. We dropped to 8 and then to 6 and then to 5, and then we went back up to 7 and I think 8 or 9, or I think 10 actually. At the last round of Donington last year, because we had Sir Chris Hoy racing with, was it Sandy Mitchell who had the...
He did. I think Sandy won the
junior driver thing.
Yeah, there was a competition for a guest driver, effectively.
Yeah. So yeah, that competition did really well and was great for social media. But so that had that many entries, and I think the Pirelli stuff maybe held them back, and I think openly it did. Some people weren't happy with the format. I know when I spoke to a couple of the teams at Donington at the start of the year, they didn't understand why you had to start the same driver in both races, the same driver had to qualify for both races. This year they've changed that, so one driver qualifies in one qualifying session and starts the race, and the other does the other two, a bit like British GT does when it rotates. So that's changed a little bit, a few other supplementary regulations. I hope it grows, because it's a fantastic series, but the UK motorsport in general seems to be suffering a bit, because it's at GT3 level, cost a little bit cheaper than GT3, but you've still got to buy a car. So it's still quite expensive. There's not that many places you can actually take it unless you want to be serious and take it over into Europe, which is where the big platform is. I would love to see the championship grow, and I really hope it does, because they're fantastic cars. They're a great spectacle, and when there's a lot of them, it's some great racing. But it's a bit like Formula 3 for me, because drivers who are going into that kind of racing, it is that level to take them into racing, but I just don't think sometimes it's not being positioned correctly in order to bring young drivers in or help young drivers develop something else, a bit like how GT4's developed. But maybe I'll see wrong. We'll get more entries at Spa, hopefully, because it's international. We'll get a few teams from continental Europe coming in, and that race, like last year, should be mixed with GT Cup in the same race, which actually was very entertaining, because you had more than one, you had 2 championships in one race, and you'll have 6 or 7 different classes in one race, which won't be confusing at all for some of us at home trying to watch, but it will be fantastically close racing. I do hope it picks up, because it is a great championship, great circuits, great teams. It just needs a little bit more pushing. But when you get the likes of Nielsen Racing, Akira Cost, Speedworks in there for a second year, and they might get a second car out there. We know there's about 20 odd Ligiers somewhere hiding in the UK, which people just aren't using in racing. Let's hope they do. But we'll see. I think it needs a bit of more time to develop, but it needs... I don't know, they've done a lot with it, and I think they've just got to wait and see how it develops, because motor racing in general has peaks and troughs, but maybe this level of motorsport just isn't going to be that well supported on a national level. Yeah,
I certainly know what you mean. Perhaps the P4 class, let's call it, the flourishing class, maybe that could be a thing which could help sway the balance if it is between P3 and P4, maybe those two together racing. That could, hopefully, yes, we both really want to see it do well, but the question is, will it?
Will it?
Yeah. And that remains an unanswered question, because Dan's just gone on for a short while and still not able to answer it.
I just don't quite understand how P4 can fit into the current racing landscape. People who want to race at that speed already race in GT4, already have entries in GT4, have bought GT4 cars. P4 cars seem a little like track day cars, very serious track day cars, and they are very serious track day cars, but we just need to see more of them out there to actually see how good they're going to be in racing each other, because...
Maybe, just had a thought, maybe a one-off end of season trophy race where you can combine, sort of like Le Mans, what's the biggest track in the UK? Silverstone? I think. Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
is.
for entries, yes.
In terms of like able to hold an international grid. One-off entry of as many P3 cars as want to enter, however many P4 cars exist, plus GT3, GT4, get them all on track together.
But
Let's have a British Le Mans.
We already have that. That's called the Creventic Championships. That was what they're trying to do at Silverstone, like at the 24, when we had a few prototypes and all that. No, it doesn't. But there's ongoing issues.
I know what you mean. Yes, they tried it, but maybe not over a 24-hour race. The 12-hour race, yes, worked decently well. But why not? I think
maybe we should have a P3 World Cup.
Ooh, good idea. Right. On that note, we will move on because we've got other stuff to talk about. You know, we're not just the problem with LMPs and stuff. And of course, if you already know your Le Mans racing and endurance racing, you probably think we're absolute ignoramuses.
What do you think, though? Seriously, if you're a fan, what do you know? Leave us a comment or send us an email at hello@motorsport.radio.
Educate me, please. But of course, we're not Radio Le Mans, so we don't specialise.
Or Radio Show Limited, whatever it's called now.
Yeah. So of course, that's not always our focus. We're I suppose anyway, personally speaking, more of a neutral fan, really, a good all-rounder. I like a bit of everything, but I'm not really an expert in any one particular thing. Is that fair to say? Anyway, right. So yeah, as Dan said, let us know. Get in touch with us. Enter your comment in the comments box wherever you're listening to this. This is Monday Motorsport on Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester. Dan Marr is here with us, and we are live. And every show that we're doing this year on Motorsport Radio is not only available to download as a podcast on our website and on wherever you get your podcasts from, but also you can watch it as well. Yes, we actually have a face for radio.
Yeah. Well, speak for yourself anyway. Visual radio.
Visual radio is what we're calling it, and it's basically it's not quite TV. It's not quite radio. Thing. It's visual radio, and yes, we will be talking about in visual radio later on the British GT Championship and British F3. They are back in action this weekend at Rockingham for the second round of their championships. It's race 4, 5, and 6 in British F3. Billy Monger will be back, and so will Jordan Kane, confirmed today as being a full season replacement for Alexandra I forget. I can't pronounce her name anyway. Monhau.
I think it's Alexandra, who sadly had that big crash at Spa.
She had a pre-season shunt and is seemingly ruled out of the season because now Jordan Kane's got her car. And we'll tell you more a bit about that if I haven't already told you just then. Later. GT as well. Any latest news and gossip about that coming up later, plus a full-throated preview with Dan Marr. He is said GT expert as well, whose viral video you might have actually seen at the last round at Alton Park involving Flick Haig.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Which we might play again later for you. Yes, that was, I think, over probably 120,000. I know it's not like numbers are quite viral as such.
History made.
Yeah, but, you know, it's all stats, all numbers. Plus, we'll be talking about touring cars as well, if we've got time, and maybe Formula 1, but definitely talking about mini bikes as well. But first, back to Donington, because it was not only the first round of the LMP3 Cup and GT Cup as well, it was the first ever couple of races, first ever few races for the Jack Cavell Heritage Formula Ford Series as well. Now, you may know the Formula Ford Super Series, or you may have heard of it anyway, involving James Beckett Motorsport. It was organised by James Beckett, and that is now no longer a thing. It's sort of evolved into a heritage Formula Ford, picking up the pieces from the National Formula Ford's Championship, who some competitors who own Formula Ford cars of a certain vintage sort of seemed a little bit sort of out in the...
out wild.
Yeah, basically, with not... I think the National Championship catered for more of the modern Formula Ford 1600 cars. And considering that the championships of Formula Ford racing itself has been going for 51 years, quite impressive. And you will... I urge you to go onto the website, motorsport.radio, if you're listening to this, or our Facebook page, Motorsport Radio, or our YouTube, or our Twitter, anywhere, basically, or anywhere on our social media, because you will see pictures of how the series got off to an explosive start, Dan.
It got off to a very hot start indeed. So, some of you may or may not know, I am a relatively keen photographer, and deciding that many things we do here on Motorsport Radio, including visual radio and photography and stuff like that. Well, I ventured out onto the track to go and take some photos, and during the first of the new Heritage Formula Ford races, I went to the chicane. I thought I could get some good shots of cars spinning and oversteer and stuff like that. So aghast was I, after burning and sneezing terribly with hay fever, turning around, seeing a car on fire. Quite literally, actually. So this number 7, I can't remember the driver off the top of my head. It was
Chris Hodgson. Sorry, Chris.
Chris Hodgson, there we go. Poor Chris. Coming out the at the final corner, I saw, there's a bit of smoke on this. Maybe there's just a bit of oil burning off the exhaust. And then as it started to come closer, as you can see in my photographs, it just bloomed into bigger and bigger and bigger. So pulls off to the side of the pit lane, just between the marshal's posts with the fire extinguishers. Pulls up. Luckily, I was in the right place at the right time, which normally our luck means we're not. We're probably on just walking away from what was going on. There you can see the fire extinguishers, pulls over the correct part of the circuit, but it goes from a small fire on the engine quite quickly into quite a large fire on the engine.
It's really rare to see a fire in any sort of motorsport, especially in Formula Fords as well.
It's not as common as you think these days, but maybe it looked like maybe a fuel line had burst and caught on fire. I didn't see it. All of a sudden, as soon as it stopped, of course, it just goes whoomph, because there's a lot more, well, the air's not rushing past as quickly, so it can burn a little brighter. The driver, Chris, gets out very quickly, as you can see, very sprightly. And then by the time he manages to get out of the car, the entire back end of the car were just engulfed in flames. You can see very big black smoke coming off that, burning the bodywork. And probably that car not going to be seeing much action in the future and be going off to the great paddock in the sky. But as you can see, the fire, especially as it stopped, wheel thrown to the left, the driver hurtles out. Marshall's doing a fantastic job as ever, and a big thank you to the Marshals who endured blisteringly hot conditions at Donington Park.
And not just because of the fire. Oh.
And not just because of the fire, but it was very, very warm, a bit of a shower. But as soon as he gets out of that car, you can't quite get to the cutoff, so it continues to burn and burn and burn. And as we'll see in a few other shots, it will just get even bigger. And unfortunately, a bit of a broken chassis. The driver's fine, though. That's the most important thing, having a bit of laugh with the marshals afterwards. But the race red flagged. It was restarted because there was about 5 minutes and 13 seconds of the race left to go. So they got 5 minutes left until the end of their first race of the day. But driver all out, all fine. And he lives to fight another day. The car... maybe not, but as you can see in these shots, the fire, he got out at just the right time because it really picked up then.
Yeah, it was, sorry to Chris for dwelling on this. It was literally just a coincidence that Dan happened to have been stood opposite where his car blew up, and that's why we're mentioning it. Plus, it's a new series, and we just thought we'd go with the tacky angle. New series, off with a bang. And such. But, a proper roaring fire in that Chris Hodgson Formula Ford. Yeah.
And you don't expect cars to burn like, especially a Formula Ford, because they're not...
very rare.
Yes. Unfortunately... car gone, but look, Marshall's going to the rescue and putting it out, just doing the best job, and they are very well equipped to deal with these kinds of challenges, and that's why you would have seen 2 different fire extinguishers, because they're there for different things. It's got the you don't just have a standard fire extinguisher anymore. You've got an oxygen. You have something that removes the oxygen from the fire to sort of starve it the oxygen so it stops burning. You've got the carbon dioxide to help it as well. So,
are you a fire extinguisher expert?
No, I just remember it being mentioned on the commentary. But that's quite a big fire for a car that size.
That is, yeah, certainly. And no wonder it was red flagged as well, because that was a raging inferno. It really was.
By the pit lane, by the entry of the pit lane.
Yes, exactly. So, it was effectively, not actually blocking, but it was, you certainly wouldn't want to be steaming into a flaming inferno like that unless your name's Kimi Räikkönen. But yeah, this happened in race number 1 as well on the Saturday. Race 1 was red flagged with Oliver White, who was leading at the time. Conor Murphy was second, and TV's own Ben Edwards of commentary fame was third at the red flag. Race was eventually restarted with 5 minutes to go, a 5-minute sprint, effectively. And, Oliver White DNF'd. He failed to finish, unfortunately. Oops. So, red flag not working out too well for him. So it was Mike Gardner who won the first ever Heritage Formula Ford race in the Crossley. And Ben Edwards, TV's own Ben Edwards, came in second place, and Conor Murphy in third place. It was quite a capacity grid, almost a capacity grid. Anyway, it was certainly one of the most full grids that weekend, with I think 22 Formula Fords, probably 21 taking the second race. But yeah, regular names who Formula Ford people might know, such like Don Boyack, Ben Edwards. He's sort of a regular. He's a celebrity anyway. And Tom Brown as well in his Van Diemen. There's quite a few people who I know. If you've never seen Formula Ford or don't care about it, you're probably just rolling your eyes right now. But whatever, because Formula Ford racing is fantastic.
Fantastic.
It is absolutely right, Murray. Oliver White did, however, he did win the second race, so all was good in the end. Conor Murphy was in second place on the podium, Mike Gardner in third, and we caught up with the man who made it all possible, and who's also behind the Walter Hayes Trophy as well at the end of at the traditional end of any motorsport season. It is Mr. James Beckett. Let's have a word with him. At the first ever round of the Jack Cavill Heritage Formula Ford, we've bumped into James Beckett, who's handily organised a fantastic series for us. Hello, James. How are you?
Very well, thank you, and thanks for your kind words.
Thank you for the putting this together. Tell us why another good packed Formula Ford series. What brought it about?
Well, Formula Ford is so popular, it's now in its 51st year of running. Formula Ford, as I've said many times before, is my passion, and the halcyon days of the category, the Kent engined era of the original Kent versions up to 1993 were fantastic, and they're what I remember in my youth, and I just wanted to try and bring that element of the category back into a contemporary feel.
It certainly has ticked all those boxes anyway at the first round here at Donington Park. We saw, so far, we're speaking just after race 1, we've seen a eventful first race, which I'm sure will attract a lot of people's comments and coverage, not the least from us at Motorsport Radio as well, who always like a bit of Formula Ford action of any type of variety. But yeah, we've saw more of a packed grid than we had anticipated coming into the round, which is always good to see as well. From your point of view, though, I suppose it's good to see a lot of people perhaps switching maybe from the National Series, or a few people coming in from Castle Combe, and that's you're sort of in a great position this series to pick up the best of both, really, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, it never wants to be detrimental to the regional series. It works in hand with those. But in the National Championship in particular, that's very much moved to the latest specification Kent cars. And if you use a car such as a Van Diemen RF 90, 91 or 92, you can run relatively competitively, but you're not in a position to win overall. And people who race cars like to win, and it's also nice to be able to bring all that great era of car together under one umbrella. It proved very successful in an element of the Walter Hayes Trophy last November, with one of the class finals being run for pre-93 cars. That was a toe in the water to see how it would develop. That was successful, and that's really what further gave us the boost in confidence to instigate Heritage Formula Ford for the 2018 season, and to assemble a grid of this quality for its first running is very encouraging.
And for some of the drivers who are eligible to qualify, the Heritage Series is also on the Mazda Road to Indy as well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a bonus for the youngsters in this series. In a way, Heritage has replaced the Super Series, which took place last year, so the two MSVR James Beckett umbrellaed series, being the Champion of Brands and Heritage Formula Ford, both provide eligible drivers for the Mazda Road to Indy. But as we're both series, not championships, the best way to accommodate that is we have nominations from each round, and then we take all the nominated drivers to a shootout at iZone Driver Performance at Silverstone in November, and the winner of that receives the ticket, our ticket, to go to the United States.
So for those who don't know the previous Super Series, and some people who might be just getting into or have heard about Formula Ford racing, because not everyone's an expert, like of course yourself and some people listening as well, just tell us then why Formula Ford still 51 years later is still as good as it has ever been.
I think it's because it's grassroots style motorsport. In proper racing cars, they're accessible cars. Yes, they've been around for 51 years, so there are a lot of cars in circulation, but they're just great fun to drive. They're learning cars. They are cars that you can teach yourself, or a team can teach a driver a huge amount of knowledge from. But also, because they're so much fun to drive, you get people in categories such as Heritage and other main events, the Formula Ford Festival or the World Haze in particular, stepping back from higher categories because they are just fun to drive and they are proper racing cars.
And of course it does provide an option for some of the younger drivers who perhaps don't have the budget, let's be kind and say that, for some of the top stepping stone ladders to get into Formula One. We've seen with your previous series, and also there's obviously with the trophy at the end of the season, quite a lot of young drivers using your series as options to showcase their talents.
Yeah, very much. The World Haze is very much the point of that, because you might have had a bad season in a higher category and you're desperate to have a notch on your CV, so the World Haze happens at the right time of year for you to come back and achieve that. But something like Heritage Formula Ford, it's accessible, it's cost effective in great cars that have got great heritage, and you can say that you've raced in a car of the type raced by David Coulthard or somebody like that, all from that Eddie Irvine, all from that era of Formula Ford, and that's what we're trying to play on. Heritage Formula Ford by name and by nature.
So if anyone is tuned in, listening, how can they actually get in touch? Maybe they know someone who has a car, or they're thinking about maybe a weekend rental or something, or maybe have a car and just not took it out for a long time. How can they get in touch with you?
The easiest way to do it is via the official MSVR website, which is msvrracing.co.uk. Follow the links and it goes straight to Heritage Formula Ford or the Champion of Brands, and all the information for Formula Ford racing under James Beckett Motorsport is accessible there.
Fantastic. Best of luck for the rest of the season and the series, and the trophy at Silverstone at the end of the season as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Motorsport Radio.
Hi, I'm Jonathan Ray from the Kawasaki Racing Team.
Hi, this is Nick Hamilton.
Hi, I'm Jamie Chadwick.
Hey everyone, I'm Bradley Smith.
Hi, I'm Joanne Zacco.
Hi, I'm Bradley Wright.
Hi, I'm Seb Morris.
Hi, I'm Dan Linfoot from Honda Racing, British Superbike team, and this is Motorsport Radio.
Welcome to the BRSCC Avon Tyres National Formula Ford Championship. It's the road to Indy for these guys, and their motorsport career starts here.
It's the best racing, isn't it? It's such fantastic racing.
I'll be going in hard on the first few laps to try and make as many places as I can and strike while the iron's hot.
So it's even more competitive, but I'm going to do my best to move the start forward as I can.
Up with highlights of the National Formula Ford 1600 Championship this Thursday on Motorsport TV.
This is Monday Motorsport with Lester Forbes on Motorsport Radio.
Absolutely, yes. My name is Lester. Dan Marr is here with us to talk about all the action that happened at the weekend, not including Formula 1 or MotoGP or any of that stuff. Partly because we usually talk about bikes anyway, during the Superbike Show, which you can catch live almost every single week right here on Motorsport Radio. And also as well, we also podcast everything. So you can download everything that we do, whether it's live streamed, if you've missed the live show, if you want to go back and listen to an interview but don't want to trawl through 2+ hours of us waffling on. We cut out all the interviews, stick them on as separate things so you can digest them, take them with you, listen to them on your travels, on your journey to work. Maybe your journey to the racetrack, maybe. It's all on motorsport.radio. Head there, check it out, do a quick search and find something new. Teach yourself something new. And also, there's also a 24/7 audio radio stream as well, which you can check out as well. Classic interviews from top riders and drivers, and loads of great features coming on there in the coming weeks. I'll tell you more about that as they unveil, as well as the first ever Motorsport Awards. You heard it here first. I'll tell you more about that again in a few weeks. I am naughty by teasing you. Yeah, so Dan Marr is still here with us, and yes, hello Dan, good evening.
Hello, I'm still here indeed, and that sounds ultimately interesting. The first ever official Motorsport Awards.
Yes, subject to confirmation, of course.
Touching wood.
Anyway, so yes, we will continue to tease you with things in the coming year. So yeah, fantastic interview there with James Beckett, and it was good to see his heritage. Formula Ford series get off to a flying start. Off with a bang, you might say. Sorry, Chris.
Please stop doing that.
But Dominic Malvin's been on, Scott Malvin's dad. He says that Formula Ford 1600 remains a great category. The Walter Hayes Trophy relaunched his son Scott's career in 2013 after a year on the sidelines. And, funnily enough, he's now in British GT, which, funnily enough, we're going to talk about next. Thanks,
nice
Tom.
segue.
Thank you. So yeah, British GT back in action this weekend. They are at Rockingham. Please go to it and check it out. It is probably the best in terms of, I say just nudges Brands Hatch, but not in terms of atmosphere. Brands Hatch will always win that. In terms of just awesome spectating, in that you can see literally almost every single metre of the track. If you've never been to Rockingham, I think they still have a tiny bit of stadium that you can go and sit in, which isn't sinking. It should be good. If you followed Rockingham's turbulent recent past, you'll know what that reference is. It's sinking, basically.
Subsidence is not fun.
No, not when you want to watch a motor race anyway. But it's still open for now, so go and check it out this weekend. British GT back in action. And well, if you missed the entire first round, well, to be honest, you didn't.
You only missed half.
You only missed half of it. There was supposed to be 2 one-hour races at Alton Park over the Easter weekend. The second race got completely rained off, as did many other motorsport events that weekend. I think BSB as well, that got almost rained off, and loads of other things. Yeah, rain basically, and it was expected to snow and all sorts of things. So, yeah, race number 2 in British GT got completely sort of cancelled. The whole meeting was cancelled basically, which led to a bit of a dilemma because the race had already started, hadn't it, Dan? Take it from there.
Always at the awkward moments. So. The second race started under the safety car. To give a bit of background, the third race of the BRDC British Formula 3 Championship started off wet, got more wet, got very wet, and then the checkered flag came out as it got even wetter.
And that was the last race of that meeting.
That was the last full race of the meeting. The GT race actually got underway behind the safety car. if you can see our live stream right now, in much worse conditions than this. But it started behind the safety car, got 3 or 4 laps in, and then they red flagged it. What then happened is they stopped it, they red flagged it, they all went to the grid, stood there for about 10-15 minutes, talked to some of the drivers, because the pro drivers were in this session, so they were the ones that could really feel the grip, understand the conditions. So a lot of them said, I don't like this because their cars are a bit tricky in the wet. Some of them also said that, you know, it was fine, let's continue, come on, just let us go. If you remember a few years ago, the Malaysian Grand Prix in 2009, when it got really, really wet.
That was a few, 09, it might have been 99.
No, it was 09.
Yes, it was. Yes, sorry, yes.
When it was really dry and then it rained quite
That was the
heavily.
famous Kimi Räikkönen ice cream.
Yes, that was where the Kimi Räikkönen ice cream comes from, because that was the year that Braun GP won the championship. But a very obscure reference there, Dan, but it was a bit like that in terms of it was dry at the start of the day, it got quite wet, and then it got wetter and wetter, and it just then... So they completed 2 laps, or 3 laps, and that was actually declared a result. The result, a full result, and full points were awarded for a race which technically wasn't a motor race because they were just behind the safety car. They circled round, they did some laps. That constitutes a motor race, and under the championship regulations had meant that it was a result, and a result was called. But a few people a bit disgruntled by the result. Barwell Motorsport really called for it because they were at the top of the field, and it means that the number 33 of Phil Keane and John Minshaw are in the lead of the championship currently. Aston Martins would have done all right in the wet. Flick Hagen, Johnny Adam had some really good results in the first race with the win and with the pole position, doing well in the second race as well. And they were at Rockingham on Friday. To give a bit of background, the Citroën C1 Racing Club had a test day for their upcoming 24-hour race for a few sessions, and then Optimum have booked the rest of the time just to themselves. So the Aston Martin have been piling lap after lap after lap after lap of Rockingham to get them really into the rhythm of the Rockingham circuit.
Bit greedy, innit?
Well, I thought that they wouldn't be able to test within a month of the starting date of the race meeting, because I know BRDC British Formula 3 have that rule, don't they, where you can't test.
That's an interesting one. That might... Should we stay quiet about that?
Wow, Lester Forbes shying away from controversy. That is a first.
Because if it is a thing, and they've maybe just forgotten about it, and we've just said,
well, I'm sorry, but if they've forgotten about it and they booked an entire testing session, did a day's worth of testing.
Well, that's presuming that this is a thing, and it might not be.
Yeah, some championships is a thing, like the British Touring Car Championship it is, and British Formula 3 is, and a few other championships is, but others aren't. So it's different for different championships. But they've got some good early running in to get within the rhythm, and the Aston Martin goes very well around the Rockingham circuit. It just sort of suits the track. Bentley, we might well see Rick Parfitt and Ryan Ratcliffe come back up to the fore. A wet Autumn Park was never going to suit the Continental with the twin-turbo V8 engine, lagging quite heavily, and a big turbochargers need a lot of spooling. It's not good on the old low traction zones, as the technical term is. But
Dan Mars Technical Talk, brought to you by Nuts and Bolts and stuff. I didn't understand a word you said.
Lester, just stop talking. But yes, as they say, the Bentley will be better suited to Rockingham if it remains dry, because there's no certainty it will. Fantastic weather we've had in the UK for the last week or so, but it wasn't very nice today. It's going to get worse over the course of the week, so we'll wait and see. The Lamborghini, if it's wet, will certainly be one up there. And then we've got the likes of the McLaren back, and the new Nissan GTR. And in GT4, it's just very open-ended. The Ginetta and the McLarens, the 570S, had some fantastic battles last year in GT4 with the first of 2 infamous clips from myself from Rockingham last year being declared when I was it Will? I think it was Will Jugurtha when I walked out. So I said, "You're quite tall, aren't you?" at the start of an interview.
I think I still have that clip somewhere.
I think we have both clips, including the now infamous "I have a logo, I have a name, my name is Dan" piece somewhere. I think as Lester goes to hunt for that.
I wasn't necessarily doing that.
You can hear the clicking in the background. So So whilst he prepares that, it's going to be a very close race meeting for GT. And the first of the endurance races is a 2-hour race. It's going to be very difficult to predict what happens because it is a very unpredictable championship and an unpredictable series. And then we've got the likes of the BRDC British Formula 3 Championship, which some good news for Jordan Kane today as he returns to the championship, hopefully recovering after suffering a broken thumb in race 2 in the first round at Autumn Park after a bit of an off at Old Hall Corner in the wet. Now, there was a bit of speculation at the start of the year as to what Jordan Kane was doing, because initially he announced he was going to be doing Formula Renault Euro Cup 2.0. He was going to go do Euro Cup in Renault. So that was going to happen, and then there was a bit of a discussion, and he got invited to go and race the first round with Douglas Motorsport.
Very, very last minute, I should add.
Very last minute after the Alexandra Monhout didn't want to go and race, understandably, after a big shunt at Spa. So he came at very short notice to come and do a bit of testing and race. First day, fantastic. He hadn't tested the car in a long time and was third quickest. Come the first of the race days, just struggled for pace a bit and then fell further and further behind until suffering with that broken thumb. Then, obviously, withdrew from the meeting. We were told at the time that there was going to be an announcement straight after the race meeting, but I think he was too busy in hospital to actually make any announcement. But I believe there was a bit of speculation as to what he was going to do. But he is doing Formula 3 this year in Britain, which is great for him and great for the championship because he's a very high quality driver. Rockingham, he didn't race at Autumn Park or Rockingham last year. I think he tested there, but
he was too young.
Yeah, he was 15 at the time, so he couldn't actually race one of these cars. So Rockingham could be another challenge, but that was some fantastic racing last year with NM Ahmed and the like. But as soon as we go to Snetterton, the next meeting after Rockingham, the third round of the championship, he's going to dominate because both of the rounds that he was at last year at Snetterton, he won race 2. So there is a precedent there.
Well, that was the reverse grid race, but yes, still, he held on to the lead of the race. And in his first ever, he just, as you say, Dan, just turned 16 years old. His first proper single-seater race in this country. And he won one of them. He won his second ever, single-seater British F3 race, which to win any British F3 race is pretty difficult to do, especially last year when he had such talent, and this year again, but especially last year.
Yeah, he had a very competitive teammate in Callan O'Keefe and certainly did a fantastic job against him, and I think gave Callan quite a tough time at quite a few moments, and it's going to be good to see what he can do for the rest of the season. Billy Monger back for the second round of the championship. It would be good to see him for the full season.
I think he did an interview on Sky Sports F1, and I think he said he's pretty much confirmed for the rest of the season, but he'll have to see.
I think it's a bit touch and go with funding because I think some of the speculation people had over the first round was, but he got a load of money off the crowdfunding. Well, he can't use any of that because that's designated for medical care and justified. To be honest, a controversial subject, but I wouldn't be particularly pleased if I had donated and him spending it on motor racing. But he's still going out there and getting budget, and it's very difficult to get sponsorship in most levels of motorsport these days. So I think getting a load of backing for him is really good, and hopefully can get just enough to continue with the full season. And I think he showed really well at the first run at Autumn Park. The first round's always a bit challenging for finding out who the real front runners are going to be over the course of a season. So Rockingham will be a great challenge to see what he can do, and I think it could suit him and his driving style very well. Kiergaard, for example, you expect him to be up there along with Linus Lundqvist. Who was it on pole position for the first round? I think it was Clement Novalak. That was it.
Who was racing at the weekend at Monza.
Oh yes, as well. He's dovetailing F3 with Euro Cup, and I think Euro Cup seems to be the priority this year.
To be honest, given his performance, I think he should stick in F3.
Well, Monza's always going to be. No offence, but come to the championship where we'll cover you. That's fine. But I think Novalak showed really good pace in testing and in qualifying, but just struggled in the races, some of it through no fault of his own, because he got involved in a collision on the first couple of corners with Krish Mahadik, I believe. And Krish is another one who's got some really good pace. So the order is going to be very difficult to predict for the full season. And Krish Mahadik and even Ravichenko could come up with a surprise or two.
Exactly, yes, and we do usually now throughout the rest of the season. Are you all right there, Dan?
I'm struggling a bit with the old throat.
Oh, okay, sorry, I won't take the mic so much. But yeah, generally for the rest of the season, we will be following the British Formula 3 Championship and reporting on the stunning events such as Billy Munger in his first race back, diving on the podium straight away. Amazing story, which I think everybody there will remember for the rest of their lives. I know I will. Old young Billy Munger. And we'd all sort of speculated about it, and we'd all sort of said to ourselves, I did anyway, should we maybe be talking about it? Maybe I'm overhyping it a bit too much. Let's not just, it's his first race back, for God's sake. Obviously he's probably not going to get a podium. If he's just finishes the race, that'll be an achievement. But he qualified, I think, in 5th place in qualifying. Started the race in 5th. Thanks to that Clement Novalak first corner incident, I think it was. Straight into the top 3 on the first or second lap, very early on in the race. And that's pretty much where he stayed. And he also did very well as well in the rain at Alton Park as well. Great testing. He'd not really gone well in the wet, given the different nature of that you have to drive, apparently, with the hand controls and with the way his foot pedal thing works in the rain. I think he was admitted basically that he was a lot slower and he was a lot more cautious, just because it's basically a pain in the butt.
It's much more difficult.
Well, yeah, obviously it would be. I mean, nothing's going to be easy for him, is it? But
no,
just amazing, and the amount of people I saw that were in tears when he stepped onto that 3rd place on the podium, unbelievable. And I think, like I say, everybody there who was there will remember it for a long, long, long time.
It was a momentous occasion. He's come fantastically from just a year ago when he had that awful accident at Donington Park, and it's great to see the achievements he's made since. He's come a very long way and pushed a lot of barriers and done really well for himself and shown that disability really isn't a disadvantage these days in modern motor racing or indeed in most sports. And I think in the wet, especially with his hand controls, where it just doesn't have the modulation. So if you can imagine, unlike say a standard road car where you have 3 pedals, you've got your clutch, your brake and your throttle, and you on a road car anyway, you should be using your right foot on the brake and the throttle and your left foot on the clutch, or even left foot braking like some people do. Unlike that, he can only use one foot really. I think he uses the leg with more on it. The leg.
His longer leg.
His longer leg is the better term for it. To actually use as a brake, he's got the throttle on his wheel on one side, as well as the clutch, because they've got hand control clutches, I believe, on these cars. But he's also got the throttle on one side, and he's got the up and down on the paddle shifter. So instead of up on the right and down on the left, he's got them on the same side, which I suppose when you're in the heat of battle, if you've been doing this for a long time, such as Billy, that can be a little bit confusing, I suppose. So it's and ultimately having a throttle on the wheel, and the one, especially with the actual throttle adjustments on the wheel, it doesn't quite have the finesse of the control that you can standardly with your foot. I'm sure you'll learn that.
We know
that, and it will be tuned.
Yeah.
It will become more tuned over the year when he gets more experience with it. But he's still, what he's come from and what he's doing right now, it's just nothing short of remarkable. Stunning. And a lifetime achievement just then, but he's got so much more to do.
I've got a feeling, Dan, he may just win a Motorsport award, an official Motorsport award.
He may
win.
There's plenty of categories to vote on. Can we tease the sign-up page?
I think we just did anyway. Well, I'm not going to mention it just because I'm a bit of a prick when it comes to teasing people about stuff like that.
Your words, not mine. I want to see.
But yeah, Billy Munger, fantastic. It's not the Billy Munger show, I should add, by the way. It is still Formula 3, and he has to still compete at the top.
Story within a story.
It's just a story within a story. That's really all it is. And if he doesn't do well this week, then he's not going to get talked about as much, basically. We don't just single him out for special praise.
At Motorsport Radio, we have an official ethos that says we will give all drivers equal coverage when it comes to anything. As long as you do well, you'll get named, and if you don't well, you just don't get mentioned.
Yeah.
Do you think Maldonado can win another race?
I was the one who said he could win the race.
Can he win another race?
Well, anything's possible, I suppose. Yeah.
Is that a yes? There we go then.
Whether he'll do it this weekend, I genuinely don't know. But Manuel Maldonado won a race, and for the first time ever, and I don't know what this has to do with the other that I'm about to mention, but I'm about to blurt it out anyway. For the first time ever, when Maldonado won his race, my microphone stopped working. It broke. And it never ever done that before. We'd recorded a podium interview. I'd done the, and I said, "Oh, Manuel, I was the only guy who believed in you, Manuel. It was me," and everyone else laughed. And I said, "No, Manuel is going to win a race this year. Genuinely, he's going to actually win a race." And he did it. And I even said it at the weekend as well. Manuel's going to win this. Oh, shut up, Lester. Said everybody. And he did it. And then I was congratulating him on the podium with an interview. Not that's what you get for winning a thing with a podium, but anyway, so anyway, and the microphone broke. It just had no audio on it, so I don't know what the...
Well, these things
draw
happen,
what conclusions you like.
It was equally shocked at the result, but all we know is that the rounds 4, 5 and 6 of the 2018 BRDC British Formula 3 Championship are going to be ever more competitive and fantastic to watch, and we'll bring you all of the latest news from Rockingham over the course of the weekend and for round 3 of the 2018 British GT Championship. But we're in more than one place this weekend. But first of all, what do you think? What's going to happen this weekend in British GT and in British Formula 3? Can Billy win a race this week? Can Maldonado win a race this week? Who do you think's going to win?
Yeah.
Let us know at M Sport Radio, live here on Facebook and in various other places. Please leave your comments or send us an email at hello@motorsport.radio, and we'd love to see what you think, because ultimately, your opinion is the one that matters. I can say whatever.
Unless you're wrong.
No one takes notice of what I say. No one takes notice of what Lester says. But whatever you say, please let us know. We'll reply to it as soon as we can. And if you're watching right now live, then we'll try and talk about it right now.
Interesting. Noel Davy Clark's been on and says basically, "Hello, Mr. Marr."
One of my former colleagues. Hello, Noel.
Hi, Noel. I think he's a friend of yours, Dan.
Yes.
And Matt Acton's been on, superstar photographer. He heard, Dan, that you've been taking some pictures, and he's been wondering, hey, what's been going on here then? And I guess he was checking it out, and he mentions that Rockingham this weekend, it's about to be 80 degrees, which is not good for his bald head.
Yeah. So, sometimes I do take photographs. It's quite a shock to civilization. I do appreciate it's something I'm relatively. It's equally good as me doing anything else. I think as Lester Forbes looks very shocked there, it's probably better for me to be as far away from the camera, from a camera as possible, just so I don't break anything. But hopefully, just bring a different angle to some of the more usual photographers you see in the British, in the British race circuits, with a slightly crappier photographer doing it. Matt's photography though. Yes. Fantastic. We had a bit of a chat this weekend. I think he was actually grumbling at me that you weren't working me hard enough. So that's just a note to you there as you look unamused. But Matt doing a great job this weekend, and some of his photographs. In fact, he put up a gallery on the Motorsport Radio website a few weeks ago from Awesome Park. So please do go and check that out, because it's a fantastic gallery there. Well, Matt's certainly going to be having some fun at Rockingham, and it's a great circuit to shoot, because you can just shoot everywhere with about a 600mm lens.
Yes, certainly. However, knowing what Matt does take pictures of, he'll be mostly focused on the fantastic people in the paddock and not there of them cars on track as such. Because anyway, check him out, Matt Axton on Matt Axton Photography, I think it is, on Facebook.
Yes.
And he comes back and says he's not bald, he's just aerodynamic.
I think that was the phrase he used at me at the weekend.
Claims all bald men everywhere.
How's yours going anyway?
My what?
This is thinning out a bit, isn't it? Well, I can't say that. Mine's growing outwards. I need to get rid of some of it.
Okay. Downside of visual radio.
It's all right.
Moving on. Right, because we have got actually other stuff to talk about. Yes, but top stuff to talk about, including British Formula 3 this weekend at Rockingham, including but not limited to Matt Acton's pictures. And also Billy Monger as well. Don Malvin's been on and says he was at a charity kart event at the weekend and did fabulously well with his hand controls and beat a load of people. Well done, Bill, for that. Other stuff that we need to get through and talk about. Touring cars back in action. The BTCC I should specify, because there are more than one touring car in the UK. TCR. Say no more about that.
So, the Dunlop MSA British Touring Car Championship.
BTCC back in action then, yes, certainly. And it's their second round? Second round.
Second round, rounds 4, 5 and 6 of their season.
Yes, certainly. And following on from a standard eventful Brands Hatch Indy race where it was wet. Was it wet? I remember it being wet.
Yes, it was wet.
Yes, certainly. It was a wet one. But basically, the standings coming into the second round at Donington this weekend, Tom Ingram is leading the championship, but only by 3 points from Jack Goff, who's in second, Adam Morgan in third, Rob Austin in fourth place, Ash Sutton, the current champion, in fifth, Colin Turkington in sixth, Senna Proctor in seventh in the standings at the moment, having that fantastic race win, a race... his first race win in touring cars. Ollie Jackson, good to see him doing well in 8th place at the moment. Rory Butcher in 9th, and Mike Bushell rounding out the top 10 at the moment. Dan, who's going to go well this weekend?
I reckon it'll be a combination of Dan Cameron, Colin Turkington, and a few other people who just bump their way up the field in both ways of the word, actually. Dan Camish, fantastic qualifying in the first round of the year. Obviously had the penalty for not stopping at the weighbridge, which is a relatively easily rookie mistake to make. Loads of pace. If it's dry, that Honda will be absolutely on the limits. Andrew Jordan will definitely be a dark horse and was really competitive at Brands Hatch. Donington seems to suit him for his local circuits. Colin Turkington often goes very well there as well, but you can't rule out the likes of Matt Neal or Ashley Sutton. And, it's a 32-car field full of some great talent, so there's plenty of winners to be decided there and 3 action-packed races to unfold. Donington's very close for touring car racing. It's a little bit longer and a little bit wider, so the touring cars will be able to have a bit more action, say, than at Brands Hatch, where it can get a little claustrophobic at times.
Yeah, not the widest of circuits, as everybody knows, especially when I think we had a couple of occasions, 3 wide, 3 or 4 cars wide. Obviously, it's never going to work out well at Brands Hatch. But yeah, Donington's slightly wider track might allow for a...
Much longer.
Much longer as well, which would be very good. Generally drama set for the touring cars. Do you have any opinions as well, if you're tuned in live, about who would do well, who you want to do well this weekend at the second round of said touring car championship? Who's perhaps not done as well as you thought, perhaps? I mean, no, for example, Plato always gets talked about because he always has a bit of a slow start in comparison to other people, but he always ends up getting going and figuring out what was problem there and then ending up in the championship hunt eventually. And that just may be the case again this year. But another season for Jason Plato in the touring cars, and he's getting on a bit.
Well, Matt Neal's been racing for even longer than Jason Plato. They seem still very competitive in the championship. Maybe it's getting to that crossover point where they might just have enough, but you never know. Jason Jason went onto Twitter a few weeks ago and it said his race meeting was nothing more than SH1T, but I think he'll improve at Donington. It seems to suit him much better. He's still a fantastic driver. There's no doubt about that. The Subaru's struggling a bit, obviously, with the changeover to the new engines. And I think he was the one with the new engine in the car recently. So,
well, Ash Sutton's in 5th in the championship.
Yeah, well, Ash Sutton, bearing in mind Ash Sutton came out with no points at the start of the year last year and still managed to win the championship. So there is still plenty of time to go in this season. Jason Plato's getting on top of the new engine and stuff like that. So we'll wait and see. He could well have a competitive season. We might well see he retires at the end of the year, but who knows? Jason, at the end of the day, will do what he does best, which is driving as well as he can and providing a great spectacle.
Yeah, certainly. That is one of the things he will be doing, I'm sure, as well as causing a bit of drama and said controversy at Donington this weekend. It is another 3 fantastic races. Who do we think? Should we have a little prediction right here, right now?
Oh, are you going to be... Is this only so you can reference this when they win?
Yes.
Okay, so...
Who will be leading the championship after Donington this weekend?
This is very difficult. I mean, to be fair, I don't know who's going to be leading the championship. I don't know. This is too competitive at the moment to say. I think Ashley Sutton will be leading the championship. Will take 1 win. I reckon Andrew Jordan will win 1 race this meeting. And I think Dan Camish may be a dark horse for race 3.
So who did you say for the championship? Ash Sutton.
I said it would be leading the championship out of the second round.
Okay.
Only because he's, at the moment, in my eyes, the only person that's high up enough who will probably stay there, who's got a good boot full of points.
Interesting.
What about you, Lester? What do you think?
I don't even know, but if anyone...
Just off the fence, what's your thoughts?
I'd probably say Jack Goff would be leading the championship after the second round at Donington this weekend.
There we go. Very, very interesting thoughts there. But what do you think?
Murray.
What do you think? Let us know on the live stream below or at M-Sport Radio on Twitter or at hello@motorsport.radio.
Exactly. Yeah, we still have loads of stuff to talk about. Amazingly, you'd think that we would have waffled on long enough, but we haven't, because we've still got loads of stuff to talk about. Formula One and the future stars of MotoGP coming up.
Hello and welcome to the 2018 Cox Motor Parts Civic Cup, the first time out on the British Racing and Sports Car Club bill.
Not easy to pass. We're all got equal machines, really.
I do like the wet, so pray for rain, I suppose.
Chocolate bits of that.
Yeah, highlights of the Civic Cup coming very, very soon to Motorsport TV. My name is Lester. This is Monday Motorsport on Motorsport Radio. Dan Marr still here with us to dissect and discuss all of the fantastic, wonderful things that are coming up this weekend, as well as everything that just happened at the weekend as well. We should tell you that MotoGP and the World Superbike talk as well. We were discussing whether we should mention it this week, but no, we're not going to do that. Just because, basically, we have a Superbike show for that, and it's usually Kiko who discusses it all.
There will be a bumper show soon with all of that and more on the Superbike show.
Coming soon to Motorsport Radio, and yeah, you can download the podcast and take it with you as well. So yeah, don't just think we exist only as a Facebook thing, only as a Twitter thing, only as a website thing, you can take us with us take us anywhere you go. Put us on your phone, in your car. That's what we usually do when we're driving down to somewhere long.
We're that narcissistic, yes.
Yeah, sometimes we are. Why not? There you go. But yeah, so podcasting and radio streams and all that sort of stuff. Motorsport Radio, yay. And a big hello, by the way, if you just found Motorsport Radio and you're wondering what it's all about, and this is your first time tuning in to a live show or let's say a recorded show. We usually talk about pretty much everything, not just bikes, not just cars, absolutely everything. And tonight, for example, we've talked about Formula Ford 1600, Heritage Formula Ford 1600. We've talked about Blancpain. We've talked about Formula Renault. We've talked about LMP3 Cup, GT Cup, and we've talked to James Beckett. And we've talked about British GT and British F3. And we've still got Formula One. That's on this weekend as well. They are at Baku. It's the Azerbaijan Grand Prix this weekend, and I won't unfortunately be watching it because I will be elsewhere doing other motorsport stuff, which I'll tell you about in a moment. But it's certainly heating up. It's round number 4 in the championship already, I think. Yeah, wow.
Yes.
Unbelievable. And Sebastian Vettel, if you've not been keeping up with Formula One standings, leads the championship at the moment for Ferrari on 54 points right now. Hamilton in second place, not won a race yet. Valtteri Bottas in third place, and Ricciardo won the last race in fourth. Kimi Räikkönen, he is still in the... Yes, he does still drive, but he's down in fifth place.
Solid fifth place.
Fernando Alonso up in sixth, though. It's all about how you look at it. It's all perspective. And Nico Hülkenberg for the Renault in 7th. Max Verstappen down in 8th. Very disappointed. He will be about that.
He's had a very difficult start to the year.
Yes. That's another word for it. Pierre Gasly, though, had a very good start to the year. In 9th place, Kevin Magnussen rounding out the top 10 in the Haas, which is unusually, worryingly competitive for said competitors of Haas.
Well, they've done a solid job in designing and upgrading their car from last year. It's evolution as opposed to revolution, and they're doing a good job. And I think that's a good way for a privateer to come into Formula One, because we see time and time again new teams come in, live for a few years, hand in mouth, not really working, and then struggling, whereas this model they've used has seemed to be more competitive and better for them. They don't earn full Constructors' Championship prize money because they don't construct the entire car themselves. They effectively outsource it to Dallara, the legendary Italian car manufacturer, race car manufacturer. But they do all their design in-house, but they buy parts in from other people, and it works suitably. And I think that's a great way to go racing in Formula One, and it's good to see they're being competitive so far. Verstappen has had a really poor start of the year and really needs to calm down a little bit, but that fire in him is there, that edge is there, and he is giving it all he can do. And I think you have to make these mistakes when you're a bit younger, because don't forget, he's still only my age. I'm only 20. He's about 3 months older than me, and he's racing a Formula One car. A lot of very different things are going on in his head, let alone actually having to drive a racing car. So he's still doing a lot of things relatively freshly, but he is one of these talents that will just burn on and get better and better every year, and you have to give him a bit of leeway at some point, because we all make mistakes. Charles Leclerc, for example, who's a bit younger, also making similar mistakes, but showing so much promise. The future of the championships and the future of Formula One looking very competitive, but Max maybe does need to rein this in a little, but that's where the man management, to use a football term, of Christian Horner will come in, because he's dealt with tricky drivers before. When he was at Arden, in Formula 3000, and all this sort of junior formula, as well as in Red Bull time and time again. So maybe that's what he needs to develop Verstappen, a bit like Vettel, from a rough and ready racer with a load of talent to a consistent race winner to a World Championship title challenger. But then again, Ricciardo's maybe getting a bit more of a push, especially considering he might have a Ferrari contract on the table, he might have offers from other people. This year's very difficult for actual driver contracts, because a lot of drivers have the end of their contracts is at the end of this year, so going to be a bumper transfer year as well.
Transfer deadline days, what we should have in motorsport. I've said this for a little while.
That would be fantastic, wouldn't it?
And we could do it live on Motorsport Radio, and there could be, let's say, an arbitrary cut-off date, and everybody could just have a last-minute flourish. And Ricciardo has made a sensational move to Ferrari. We've got Danmar standing outside the Ferrari gates.
I say, just having me stood in the rain at Milton Keynes, to say, we've seen Ricciardo coming through the gates here about half an hour ago. He's having a physio at the moment.
Yeah, and Christian Horner would be the Harry Redknapp equivalent, sort of stopping to talk to the press outside of his car window. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then just
that's a very very legendary clip from the world of football. It would be quite. Imagine, I mean, it wouldn't work in motorsport for very obvious reasons.
It could do though.
It
could.
See, this is where the stuff like the European Le Mans series and the Road to Le Mans, where they do have like proper up and down relegation. That's part of the LMP3 thing. They have relegation between and sort of promotion between the two championships. So maybe it could work there. Yeah, the sort of building blocks of a successful motor racing series.
Excellent. I think that would be a good idea, actually. We might be able to make a show out of that. Maybe, let's say, like, I don't know, the 1st of February, do a transfer deadline or something like that, and then just give like a load of updates as to who's gone where, and maybe we'll get a couple of exclusives on from riders and drivers about, oh, so and so, and they come on and then they break news, and then we'll be like, oh yeah, blah blah blah, so amazing. That's just what's in my head. Enough about what's in my head, though.
Don't ask.
So yeah, Formula One, that's what we were talking about. There's been fresh speculation, Danmar, over the extra paddle found on Vettel's steering wheel. Now, this isn't a Billy Monger adaptation. This is an extra paddle on Vettel's steering wheel. He's got to describe it, I probably should have put a picture up for the visual radio listeners. He's got two main paddles for a clutch and a thing, the gear thingy, plus a mysterious paddle. And, well, people are wondering what it is. It's certainly not a drinks dispenser.
Yeah, I think this is where I could have had my proper like sim racing paddle wheel in front of me, so I could have demonstrated. No, so I'm looking at an illustration at the moment of what this it is.
Ferrari have been so far kind of tight-lipped on it, obviously.
Well, yes. I mean,
whatever it is, it's obvious enough to be noticed, and obvious and legal enough to have been tested, presumably, and passes any. I'm presuming that an FIA guy was like, "Yeah, then what's that?"
But it's not,
and then because you've got to explain these things, haven't you?
So it looks. I'm looking at it at the moment because Formula One cars don't have two clutches on them now. They've only have a single clutch on the wheel, so it's not a clutch. But apparently, from what I'm reading on a unverified source, is that it's a sort of rotary-like device. So could it be a bit like on an LMP1 car, where it's a rotary-esque thing where you can actually change the regeneration of the powertrain and actually getting energy back and deploying it? It could be something like that. I don't think it can't. I wouldn't reckon it's something like brake bias or something, because that's the upshifting side of the wheel. So that's when you actually shift up. So it could be a modulation of the power delivery, because of course only on Vettel's car, maybe he's found something on the front of the wheel a little bit irritating to do on there, but if you can do it effectively when you're shifting up at the same time, or you can shift with the lower part of your hand and use that to actually change the setting. Well, I don't know obviously the construction of the full electronic system on a Formula 1 car, because that's ultimately not, I don't work in Formula 1, I don't know these things, but we can just speculate. But it only appears on Vettel's wheel, not Raikkonen's. So maybe it's the driver preference that they would prefer something that way around.
I think it's probably not on Raikkonen's wheel just because he probably doesn't want it. Or something
exactly,
like that.
That's what I mean. When I say it's a driver preference thing, potentially then.
Plus, they're not going to, use all their resources for Raikkonen and stuff, are they? So.
Well, a wheel comparatively, they already will have a couple of wheels built for each driver. The wheels will change slightly for each driver. Whilst for example, when we see the onboard shots, they look relatively similar. The buttons will be remapped and moved around to try and suit each driver's preference. It's as stupid as it sounds. It could be the difference between Raikkonen being right-handed and Kimi Raikkonen being left-handed. Because if it's on the right-hand side of his car and he's got to reach over to try and change a knob or something, a rotary knob, no, it's not even... So the way you demonstrated, the paddle shifters don't change on the side of the car, normally. That's normally remains static, a bit like a sequential gearbox. But it could be something as simple as having on this side a rotary knob trying to change it whilst you're trying to shift down, whereas when you're accelerating, you want to change it. So it's having to drive and shift with this hand as well as having to play a knob on this side. So you're moving your hand not on the grip on this hand side. But it could just be that he wants to change the regenerative system, and he can do that on this rotary switch. In fact, if you cut away to something else in a second, I'll go and get something I can actually demonstrate.
No, we don't need a full-throated demonstration. I could barely understand that, to be honest. But thank you for the explanation. Genuinely. But yeah, no. Other suggestions that what it might be is some sort of device to stop the engine, because if you remember at the start of the season, Ferrari, and they currently do, have a very, very stinky and smoky engine, which pours out a load of smoke whenever it starts up or does something, and it could be something to either release a load of smoke at a certain point or stop it releasing a load of engine smoke when it's non-optimal, for example. It could be something like that.
Well, why would you have a smoke device on the back of your wheel?
Wacky races.
What? Okay, well, I don't quite understand why you'd have a smoke generator on the back of the wheel on the upshift side of the wheel. If you're starting up, something like that you would think would actually be pre-built into an engine management software at certain low revs in certain gears.
Maybe it's a workaround, a temporary thing while they're doing... fixing whatever it is.
But if both cars are smoking, then why is it not happening on Raikkonen's car as well as Vettel's car, even though... This is what I mean. You can't digest it this closely because it's not something that can automatically do. But it's not a clutch. We know it's not a clutch. But
should we just ask Ted Kravitz? He'll know.
Ted Kravitz will potentially know. From what I'm looking at, some of the pictures, it's unlikely that it's sort of doing that kind of thing, but I do think it could be something to do with the MGUH actual hybrid delivery, because although the FIA looks at this, and this would have been homologated by the FIA, surely they couldn't have kept it away from them. They would have found it.
Yeah, whatever it is,
because they all have standard electronic units now, don't they? So,
like I said, they're obviously not hiding it because it's right there on the steering wheel, and I'm presuming that someone at the FIA have said, "What's this? What does it do? How does it work? Okay, thanks for the explanation. You're fine to race."
Yeah, it would have been seen in scrutineering because they're looking for these kind of things. But there's a history of these things not being found before. If we go back to, I think, 98 with the brake steer on the McLaren, when they didn't have that, they just a photographer found the third pedal. Yeah. It wasn't the FIA that noticed it. It was a photographer who just happened to take a picture of the footwell. But I don't quite... It doesn't, as you say, it doesn't add up. I don't think it's going to be a smoke generator or something like that, because it's a massive waste of resource to put a paddle like that on purely to display some bloody smoke.
He is linked to the championship, so whatever it is, and if it is linked to anything like anything, I don't even know, but whatever. Vettel is leading the championship. He's got apparently a mystery flappy paddle on his steering wheel. Because he's leading the championship, he's obviously under more scrutiny. Everyone's just like, hey, what's that all about then?
I think it's a rotary. I don't think it's just a paddle as such. It's a rotary paddle. So it's actually got multiple selections on the actual piece.
Okay. Whatever it is, I'm sure it'll be found out. If you know what it is, let me know, because I'm sort of scratching my head here. Get in touch with us at M Sport Radio on Twitter, Motorsport Radio on Facebook. Hello@motorsport.radio. Radio is the domain and email address for Motorsport Radio. My name is Lester. Damar is here with Monday Motorsport, and we're currently talking about Formula One. A couple of other bits of things that I wanted to get your opinion on, Dan. There was a story over the weekend, I believe, that Gunther Steiner, the Haas boss, says Formula One should not be dumbed down by following IndyCar's path of moving towards spec cars.
Well,
said the guy who currently purchases third-party equipment for his cars.
That's you're just linking two things and getting something completely wrong. The argument you're presenting is not fair, because that's not dumbing down a sport. That's just buying parts. The thing that IndyCar do, and have done for quite a while, and I agree, in American open wheel racing, it's needed and it works perfectly for their products. Now, they had the aero kits a while ago. It just went all a bit naff because they weren't paired. They weren't have the parity. Didn't have the parity between them, which didn't quite work, which didn't make everyone competitive. We've gone back to less downforce, a spec kit on the aero, and the engines, which are very well matched, has meant for more competitive racing, and it's opened up the championship for them, and you got a bit of a choice, and choice is good. And then when it comes to stuff like aero kits, if you keep them mandated at the same kind of thing, the chassis ultimately is made, they try and make it as safe as they can, and obviously always making it safer after the terrible accidents for the likes of Justin Wilson recently, and big crashes in the Indy 500 a few years ago. But for their product, it's fantastic. It works brilliantly, and I think it works on the circuits they need it to, because they race on a very wide range of circuits. Formula One has a much longer history of being much more open in terms of regulation, and I agree on this. I don't think stuff like format of racing should be fundamentally changed, because you can either appeal to the hardcore motor racing enthusiasts like you or I, and maybe yourself watching at home, or maybe you're just a casual person that thinks, you know what, I maybe enjoy watching it an hour and a half long race, but I just think it's too long. Well, if that's your opinion, that's fine. But the ultimate choice is about motor racing is there's choice. We do have choice in what you watch. You have choice in what there is to enjoy.
Yeah, but if you choose the wrong thing, then you're wrong.
Well, no, not necessarily. I have a lot of different choices in racing, and people don't agree with all of them, or I don't agree with people in certain championships. But ultimately, we all enjoy different things of the sport. But I just feel that why do we always look at Formula One is like a lot of different things in life. We always say how broken it is. Oh, the racing's not good and it's too expensive and everyone can't race. Yes, it is a bit too expensive. I believe it's a bit too expensive for genuine privateer teams to come in and have an actual competitive car, and I would like to be able to see that back a little bit more, so we can have more flavour, more drivers up and coming to get a bit more into the championships. I would love to see
One of the ways they can do that is by getting a spec car, maybe by Dallara.
Well, Dallara are one manufacturer of racing machinery. There are lots of Toyotas for another one, but I don't think Formula One should not go down the route of spec engines or maybe spec front wings or spec rear wings. But I think fundamentally the development and the technology should be allowed to stay there and be there, because that is what Formula One has always been, is about that technology and the racing. We go back over the history of Formula One, over the history of motor racing. Not every single motor race in history has been a good motor race. Well, it hasn't. I'm sorry, but it just hasn't. If every race was a brilliantly close wheel-to-wheel race, then every race we just say, oh, this is really boring, because every race is the same. Then, yes, Mercedes have been really dominant and really struggled. We had that with Ferrari ages ago. We've had that with other teams going further and further back. It's in the history of the sport. We should tighten it up maybe to make it a little bit more competitive, but I do feel that the technology should be there to allow people to do what they want with the cars and try and attract the fans, because ultimately fast cars, which sound good and which look good, make racing really popular. But I think, for me, Formula One, we shouldn't meddle with it too much, because it just needs to be relevant, because as relevant as it can be for manufacturers to come in, as cheap as it can be for privateers to come in, and affordable for drivers to actually be able to afford and actually get the chance to come and race.
Yes, obviously we all agree with that. We want more good racing provided by privateer teams at low cost and entry-level things. People doing motorsport on a budget always provides characters and personalities and such. But I just found it weird that the guy who buys who has his chassis made from Dallara, the same people who make the Indy cars.
No, his chassis are manufactured by Dallara. They design the car. They design the parts. It's not the same thing as buying a chassis off the shelf and racing it in a spec series.
Probably the main thing that you can do to achieve the aims that you said is by having spec cars, like, for example, by Dallara. Anyway, so...
Well, I don't quite understand the argument you're presenting, because they design their own cars. I understand there's a sense of irony, because he's saying, we shouldn't go down the path of spec cars. But he's not buying a spec car. They're sending Dallara an order to build a chassis. It's no different. McLaren, when they first had the carbon fibre chassis, didn't build the chassis. They were all done by aircraft manufacturers. Some teams still do that because it's just cheaper and easier to do it, outsource it, and the labour to do it, as opposed to actually building it in-house. But fundamentally, they're still designing and building their own cars.
Stop explaining things really well.
I understand what you're saying.
Yes,
I understand what you're saying.
All right, so, right, park that to one side. And we've got one other F1 topic to discuss. But before we do, I want to say hello to Shaka Anderson, who's been in touch and is also tuned in, or was for a couple of seconds before... before they realised that they were wasting their time. It says, "Evening, lads." Hi. The Blancpain endurance race at Monza yesterday was a fantastic race. In the position and the position swap for Van Thor was controversial, in my opinion. Shaka says, but we won't talk about that because we've already talked about it enough already, and we've got to move back to Formula One. But yes, we agree. Basically, Felipe Massa has come out and said Williams are now paying the price for putting money first, says the guy who spent his last few years at Williams being paid.
But that's different. Again, that's you can't connect those things because they're not.
I just did.
Yes, but they're not the right points to connect. The point that Massa was trying to make was, well, because they've gone with two drivers who are paying for their drives as opposed to being paid professionally or being paid fully for the drive, and most drivers bring sponsorship to a team. Do you think the likes of Stoffel Van Dorn is there purely on talent and not for the fact that Richard Mill, who are a personal sponsor of his as well as McLaren, bring a substantial amount of money to the team? No. Motor racing really isn't that black and white anymore, and if you think so, I'm afraid, sadly, it's not true. It just isn't. But the issue is that Sirotkin, I think, is a very talented driver. Lance Stroll is also a very competent driver. They're paying the price for having two younger drivers who haven't got that much experience in Formula One. The chassis haven't been as good as they've been over the last couple of years because they've not had the levels of funding, and now Williams need the money more than ever now that Martini are leaving at the end of the year. I understand why he's saying they're paying the price, but at the same token, if you are in Claire Williams' position and you don't have an awful lot of money, can you justify turning away $20 million a year to say, no, we're going to pay someone to be in this drive who we can't guarantee is going to be as competitive? Because bearing in mind...
It's more about the car, to be honest, than the development rather than the drivers.
Yeah, and they need the money. The more money they have to develop the car, the better. And you can't do that if you're giving money away as opposed to receiving money.
Exactly. I mean, you could literally just stick any old couple of competent, decent drivers in there.
It's the trade-off between having the prize money and having the money to develop the car, but you need the money to develop the car to get the prize money, so you can get drivers that might get you into the next tier of it's a crescendo effect, isn't it?
Yes, you're right there, Murray. So Felipe Massa should shut up, in effect, is what you're saying, Dan Marr. Dan Marr told Felipe Massa to shut up.
I did not say that. I'm just suggesting my argument for it. But it's a bit like Formula E, isn't it?
No.
We don't see paid drivers in there. They're all very competitive, but they're paying to try and get the best position possible because they don't need the money to get the actual development of the cars in, because they don't have to spend as much money developing it. But that's down to manufacturing involvement. It's the same thing in pretty much all levels of motor racing. You either pay to push the car forward, or you pay to push the car forward, or someone pays to get into the car so they can then pay to get the car forward.
I know what you mean. We know what you mean. Yeah, certainly. Are Williams suffering from their decision to receive money? Probably not. No, to be honest.
Let us know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, if your hardened stance against Williams, let us know, or your hardened stance for Williams, or do you think Kubica should come in and save the day? I think Billy Monger would be good in that Williams, to be honest.
If you have an opinion on this, please send.
He could. Slap a couple of pounds.
If you've got an opinion. If you've got an opinion on the Williams story, just send us an email, hello@motorsport.radio. Say, dear sir/madam, I fully believe that Winfield's Williams was the worst thing that happened to the team in its entire inception. Please prove me wrong, and then we'll discuss that on the show next week. But
how could you say that about Zanardi's Williams?
The less said, the better. It wasn't BAR. Let's leave it there.
Anyway, Felipe Massa slagging Williams off now
after he's left.
Yeah,
for the second time.
For the second time. That was that. Formula One in Azerbaijan, maybe for the last time, because it's a bit. There.
To be fair, the racing's quite good.
I'm still waiting for someone to slam into that castle, and no one's done it yet.
I think. Well,
am I just being morbid?
Touch wood. No one goes off in towards the castle, because that would not be good. I think there's been a few Porsche crashes up there in the recent years, but GP3 and GP2 or F2 and whatever they're called this week,
they're called Lando Norris.
And you're inferring that he's going to be the first to send it into the barriers by the castle?
No, I mean, that wasn't what I meant at all. But yeah, no, there's an article on the website motorsport.radio about how Lando about how Lando. I can't speak anyway. But just asking the question: has Lando Norris already run away with the F2 title? Let us know your thoughts on that.
Yes, and if you have a guest article you'd like to contribute to the Motorsport Radio website, we have loads of fantastic ways for you to submit all your content. It's not just articles we do. We've got photo galleries. We've got polls. If you want to run a poll, for example, saying, do you think Felipe Massa was right to say what he did? Yes or no, for example. You can go and create that and submit it to us, and then we can publish that and get all your friends and family involved. Do sign up to the website.
Let's gather around the laptop and
you don't see that anymore, really, do you?
No, I never did.
That's a very niche reference a long time ago. But if you want to submit articles or actually inquire about joining our fantastic team of journalists and podcaster, commentatory pundits, I think we'll call ourselves for this, like myself and Lester, then go over to motorsport.radio and you can find out all about how you can get onto the esteemed ladder of motorsport journalism. And if you want to read an insightful book about that, don't read the Roy Lanchester one. He tweeted himself saying he doesn't like young journalists.
Anyway,
it's a very obscure reference, but
we're always looking for top talent to join our growing team as we get bigger and expand Motorsport Radio in 2018, as well as into various other brands. I'll tease you a bit more about that at another time. One final thing before we go. The Cool Fab Racing British Mini Bikes Championship, the second round of that is happening this weekend. Live radio coverage and visual radio coverage right here on Motorsport Radio and on the Cool Fab Racing website and on the social medias of both our things as well. So, Dan, what is the Cool Fab Racing British Mini Bikes Championship?
The Cool Fab Racing British Mini Bike Championships are at Clay Pigeon Raceway in Dorset for round 2 of 8. The first time in their 15-year history that they're visiting the Dorset circuit. And it's a championship for young riders and slightly older riders. There's junior classes and senior classes where you can all get stuck in and ride mini bikes around karting circuits. And It's fantastically close racing, and it's an official partner series to the Bennett's British Superbike Championship, as well as on the road to MotoGP, and with the likes of Danny Kent, Bradley Ray, recent BSB race winner, and loads of other fantastic riders coming through the ranks from the Cool Fab Racing series to actually riding professionally in the bigger categories and going on to great things all around the world. So we'll be providing live coverage with myself and Kiko Giles for all 3 races for all of the categories over the course of the weekend to talk about the upcoming generation of top talent coming into motorbike racing, as well as some of the guys and girls who are there for just a bit of fun and want to get a bit more experience on racing bikes. And we'll be sure to bring you all of the exclusive coverage live from Clay Pigeon, only on Motorsport Radio and the Cool Fab pages.
Exactly. This weekend, all weekend, live, every single race live, providing we've got good internet to stream it, of course. But yeah, live action on said radio of motorsport varieties. But yeah, just to tell you as well just how significant this championship is in the grand scheme of motorcycle racing. Brad Ray, as Dan said just a second ago, double BSB race winner, and former championship leader of BSB, has, I believe, and now up until last year, the penultimate round of the championship was actually racing in the Cool Fab Racing British Mini Bikes Championship. He's got a long he's got a long history with the championship, and he and many other riders, a lot of current BSB riders, some MotoGP riders as well, and people on the world stage competed here. They started here. This is the grassroots of the next level, the next superstars of motorcycle racing, and they will be all here, all racing this weekend. And as well, if you're in the Dorset area near Yeovil or Dorchester,
between sort of Dorchester and Yeovil,
it's basically
and Taunton,
it's kind of in between them two. You can head to the Clay Pigeon Raceway, where you can get free entry to actually come and watch these fabulous racers racing mini bikes. And if you've never seen mini bike racing, do not write it off. It is amazingly competitive. Yes, they're young people and small people, not literally that big.
Slightly bigger.
But yes, the level of competitive spirit and camaraderie that you get in these races and in the paddock is just not to be matched anywhere. It's fantastic. You've got the likes of Casey O'Gorman, Dylan Miller, Josh Bannister, Ollie Walker, for example, just to name a couple of people who are racing in the Mini GP 50 category as well. Evan Belford, Sean Abel, Callum Beach, Bailey Stewart Campbell, Finn Smart, all racing, and other people as well racing in on the pit bikes, and who are already racing on the BSB bill, and already some people in the British Talent Cup as well. Harvey Claridge, for example, current pit bike champion Jamie King as well, Sam Clowes, who's we'll try and remember that he's not Simon Clowes' brother this week. That was Kiko's fault.
That was Kiko.
He had a little thing, but yeah, it was all good fun. And yeah, join us generally for fantastic second round live coverage, live. Every single race live, not just the televised races on one particular day, but we got all the rounds live, every single race, Saturday and Sunday on motorsport.radio with Dan Marr and Kiko Giles, and I might be there as well, so that'll be pretty good. And that's just about it, really. Dan, your personal favourite, apart from Cool Fab Racing this weekend, if you weren't there doing that, what would you be in front of TV watching?
Oh, it's very difficult. I'll probably be trying to catch up on various endurance championship races, because between loads of stuff going on in the last few weeks, I've still got a lot to catch up on. I've still got to go and play some bloody golf, but
that doesn't sound like a motor race.
No, it's not. Nigel Mansell was a big fan, but Yeah, it's a very difficult choice. I think I would probably end up watching the touring cars in that respective package, because Donington Park is always a fantastic spectacle, especially with the likes of the Ginetta GT4 Super Cup and the Porsches and everything else. All fantastic racing. That's what I would probably be watching, but then I watch lots of different stuff, so I've probably got multiple feeds on at once. I know you and I, with our sort of 21:9 ultra wide monitors, we can watch all sorts at the same time on a massive screen. So
well, a lot of people have. It's kind of standard now that everyone watches
2 or 3 things at once.
Yeah, that's why people have second screens. That's why it's known as a second screen, for example. So you're watching one thing, another thing's on, and it's
live
always
timing.
better to watch it. Yeah, live timing, or football, for example, in between races. It's always better to watch it live, I would say, in general. Or actually. But yeah, so F1 this weekend, touring cars this weekend. There's also TCR and World Rallycross as well, which we might get to preview later in the week with Phil Kinch as well. So if you're into that sort of thing, stay tuned to motorsport.radio for a couple of videos coming your way, and or podcast, whichever you prefer. In the meantime, you can head to our website, motorsport.radio, for 24/7 live radio sort of coverage of brilliant interviews and lots of educational things to tell you about motorsport, and the occasional entertainment piece as well. So yeah, loads to do. And that is the end of the show, Dan. We've done it. We've managed to do it.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you very much for tuning in or staying tuned, and you've done really, really well. I should come up with some sort of reward points for anyone who started the show and stuck with us throughout the entire thing.
Is that going to be another brand? The official Motorsport Radio Awards point thing?
Oh yeah, the official Motorsport Awards. I'll tell you about more later. Maybe next month. Anyway, so my name is Lester. Damar also here, and we're saying good night and goodbye.